Hey, it's Thomas Mulready from CoolCleveland.com, and we're here today on the campus of Case Western Reserve University. And we're in the studios of WRUW Radio, and we're here with Jim Szabo, the legendary. You've been doing this now as a jazz disc jockey for what? You were saying something like
37 years. I was an undergraduate here at Case in 1973, and I really got my first show in '74, and it may be the longest-running jazz show in the country.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
People here, you literally are legendary. People know your shift. They know your show down by the Cuyahoga.
Yep.
And you've been into jazz since the '70s. How do you remember when you first heard about jazz? It's not the most popular art form out there. How did you first get turned on to it?
Well, I was in junior high and high school and played an instrument like so many other kids, and then I got really involved, started running with some other kids who got into a jazz band, started a jazz band in high school.
Okay.
And that really got me interested, and then I remember getting my first FM radio in the family and listening to it and turning down to all these weird stations, that low power stations that emanated from the colleges.
And they were at the low end of the spectrum.
They were, and that was really what turned me on, because at night they were playing Coltrane and all this other great music that I had no access to, and boy, it really turned my head. And fortunately, when I became an undergraduate, I gravitated right down here.
So you started as a musician and then kind of got into radio, and that's just led to a lifelong passion for you. You've been in Cleveland all these years.
Yep.
As a jazz aficionado, do you find that there's a certain style, because there's a lot of jazz artists come out of Cleveland. Is there a Cleveland sound, a Cleveland style, or do you not think that that's really...
Well, I don't know that there's a style, but there definitely is a long line of very prominent jazz musicians who have affected all of jazz from their bases here in Cleveland. I mean, you look at Tad Dameron was a wonderful arranger working with the beboppers in the 40s, and you have Albert Eiler, who was a tremendous avant-garde jazz musician in the 60s, and now you have people like Joe Lovano, who left from Euclid, Ohio, and is one of the most prominent jazz musicians in the world today.
Yeah.
So Cleveland has always made its contribution, and so many of the Cleveland musicians have chosen to stay at home here, and so they enrich our lives here.
It's funny, though, isn't it? Because, you know, we talk about rock and roll, and we see this sort of history of rock and roll coming from Cleveland because of Alan Freed, disc jockeys, because of radio. You know, you can see polka. There's a Cleveland-style polka that comes out of this part of the world.
Right.
But, you know, where does the jazz thing come from? Where do these people... Where do they pick it up and you know, make it a part of their lives?
Well, I think jazz has always been, there's always been a small percentage of people who have been into jazz, whether they're learned people who went to school and got exposed to the music. And so there's little pockets of jazz everywhere, and I think that was much more exploited maybe in the 50s when all the musicians who played at clubs, they got in cars and they drove from town to town, and so you had a real building of a network of people who played. And so the musicians here in town got that regular care and feeding from the music of others. So it worked out really, really well, I think, and that's kept the Cleveland scene going all these years.
And of course we've had the Tri-C JazzFest now, which is really one of the major jazz platforms in the world, I guess you could say. Really.
It is. 32nd year for the Jazz Festival now. It's 11 days. I remember being involved in really starting Jazz Fest #1, and that was a 3 or 4 day affair.
Sure.
And it's really grown, and it's really become the centerpiece of the jazz scene here in Northeast Ohio.
And that's something that people look forward to, and they see the visiting artists come in. And a lot of folks here, even from Cleveland, are performing this year. I was surprised at the number of Cleveland artists, you know, everyone from Ernie Krivda. He's doing a piece called Thunder from the Heartland.
Yeah, absolutely. Ernie is one of the most prominent musicians here in town. And what he's done is he's put together a project where he's invited some of his friends from the Midwest to really pay tribute to the music of the Midwest. There's musicians from Indianapolis and Chicago and Detroit, Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, all coming in. And and there is, I don't know if there's a Cleveland sound, but there certainly is a Midwestern sound.
Versus like a New York thing or a New Orleans thing or a Chicago thing, which they each have their own flavors and styles, but this is more of a Midwestern take on things.
And so that'll be a very interesting show. And then you've got other prominent musicians here in town, Eddie Backus, who is a great resource that a lot of people don't know about, but he's been very influential. He gave nationally known jazz musicians. Their start here in town, and so he does an annual concert, which will be an organ battle. He will play with a guy by the name of Bobby Floyd, who's from Columbus, and the two of them will lock Hammond B3s up on the stage at Caramoo House, and believe me, if it's anything like last year's show, it'll be rocking. So.
That is so cool. You think of that instrument itself, a huge sounding organ, and yet turned into jazz, not gospel or church organ-y.
Right. You know, and that's the thing about the Jazz Festival. They're covering all angles because the last couple of days, the last Sunday of their festival, Saturday and Sunday, they're doing a couple of gospel concerts as well.
That's right.
So it's going to be really interesting. I think the Cleveland connections of that. There's a young saxophonist by the name of Dave Sterner.
Dave Sterner.
He's just made his second recording, and he's a very prominent educator and musician here in town.
Right.
So he'll be playing. The women of Northeast Ohio get together and do an annual show called Women in Jazz. It's singers and instrumentalists paying tribute. They're going to pay tribute to a musician by the name of Betty Carter, who was a wonderful singer here in town. And one of the musicians coming back for that is a guy by the name of Dominic Farinacci, who went through the Tri-C Jazz program, went on to Juilliard, is in New York now, playing around the world. So he's coming back and joining his old friends from home as well.
Yeah, so a lot going on with Cleveland artists. They're also doing other tributes, like the tribute to Ella Fitzgerald.
Yeah, Dee Dee Bridgewater is an American singer who now lives in Paris, and she owes a lot of her musical style to Ella Fitzgerald, and so Tri-C JazzFest was able to come up with a really interesting pairing of Ella and her group and the Cleveland Orchestra.
The orchestra,
and so they'll be performing the first Friday of the Jazz Fest and paying tribute to Ella Fitzgerald, and then you've got a tribute to Miles Davis and John Coltrane, which both of those cats would have been 85 this year.
That's
and
crazy.
So they're looking at the music of them by a repertory ensemble that Tri-C JazzFest put together, with Howie Smith plays sax and Glenn Holm plays bass, and they co-lead the group, and they'll be playing the music along with a guy by the name of Benny Golson, who is a contemporary. He's 82 now, and he's a contemporary of Miles and Train, and he'll be coming in, playing and reminiscing about that music.
Unbelievable. Tri-C's putting together this this jam fest, they're calling it, with Medeski, Martin, and Wood, right?
Yeah, they've tried real hard to reach different audiences. The Jazz Festival is a combination. There are very few people like me who go to everything.
Sure.
Everybody picks and chooses, and it's a cafeteria menu, and you pick what you want.
Yeah.
And last year, I know one of the concerts, unfortunately, I don't think it was as financially successful as it could have been, but they brought in the Roots, because the Roots show roots of all black music, including jazz. This year, they're taking a different bent, and they're bringing in Medeski, Martin, and Wood, who's one of the prominent jazz and jam bands around. They know the history of jazz, but that's only part of what they do. They know the history of all the music that they've come in contact with. That show's going to be really interesting, because there's going to be 3 acts. They're going to start at 7 o'clock, and who knows when they're going to end. They're just going to keep going.
One song.
Yeah, maybe so, but they're very fine. Dr. Lonnie Smith is a wonderful organist, and Will Bernard, who's a fantastic guitar player from San Francisco, will be coming in. So it'll be 3 acts, and then they're all going to jam in various configurations. So it'll be a really interesting time.
It's nice how they bring in the high school all-stars that are taking classes here at Tri-C.
Yeah.
And showing the young kids and giving them a little platform. They got the Shaw High School, the famous Shaw High School marching band.
Well, I just found out, which is going to be really interesting. There's they're bringing up a band from New Orleans known as the Stooges Jazz Band. They're a brass band. They're a brass band from New Orleans, and they're coming up for a day before. They're going to be working with the Shaw kids, so to show them the history of New Orleans jazz, and they're going to work together on the opening show. So it's going to be a really
like a
nice
Mardi Gras style.
Kind of, they're going to march from
parade.
Towers City down to 4th Street, do concerts at both ends. So it'll be a nice combination.
Got Trombone Shorty at the House of Blues, and he's huge and getting bigger. He was just here a few months ago, wasn't he?
Yep. Shorty knows how to party, and that show is, you talk about a kickoff show, that is going to be
off the hook.
It is. He's going to rock that place, because he's got energy all the time.
What are you looking forward to? You going to go to everything, or you have certain ones you're really...
I'm going to go to a lot of it, that's for sure. What am I looking at? Well, I sort of like a little left-of-center music, and there's quite a few opportunities to hear that as well. WRUW is a co-sponsor of a show by a pianist by the name of Robert Glasper. He's going to be playing over at MoCA and the Museum of Contemporary Art, and he's bringing his trio, and he's really interesting because he's just done recent recordings with Mos Def and other hip-hop artists, but yet he's playing this show in more of a straight-ahead jazz context, but you know that all the music he's been listening to and working with filters in through his piano, so that's a nice thing. Tri-C always does what they call a debut series, and it's really a no-cost opportunity because it's a free concert. It'll be at the East Cleveland Library. They're bringing in two groups. One is, again, I like to see female instrumentalists because you think about women and they're either chick singers or they play piano and that's it. Tia Fuller is a saxophonist. She's leading a quartet. She'll play at the East Cleveland Library, and then a young trumpet player from Chicago by the name of Ambrose Akinmuziri, who just won a national competition for jazz, and just got a record deal and just put out his first recording for the Blue Note label, a very prominent jazz label. And those cats will be playing for free at the library on a Sunday afternoon. So there's no reason.
Such a great venue there.
Oh, it is. It's a wonderful place to hear music.
Unbelievable.
So that's I give Tri-C a lot of credit because they do East Side, West Side all around the town. They're using new venues this year. There's a concert at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There's a concert at a couple of churches. There's
Brothers Lounge.
Brothers Lounge they use. So if people have some, I know you've got in Cleveland the whole East Side, West Side thing. If there's some reticence that you don't want to go far to hear this music, you won't have to because there's a lot of different places to go.
And this music is American music. It brings all these strains together, as you said, from gospel to funk to the roots to
that's it.
folk.
You've got the different styles. You've got the different locations. You've got 82-year-old Benny Golson, and actually one of the people who's coming is for their discussions is a record producer by the name of George Avakian. He signed Miles Davis to Columbia Records back in the 50s. He's 92. So 92-year-old him. Ambrose is 28. So you've got both ends of the spectrum.
High school kids.
The high school kids who are even younger. And let's not even talk about they do a concert called Jazz for Kids.
That's right.
And Beth Rakowski has told me that they expect kids as young as 2 years old to dance around to the music and beat on things and all of that. So they really are trying to integrate the music in people of just about any age.
So the moral of the story, get your rest now because for 11 days.
It's 11 or 12 days. It starts the 27th or 28th of April, goes until May, and Cleveland will be jamming.
It will be. It is so great talking with you, Jim, and congratulations on your long tenure here. And we'll see you at the Jazz Fest.
We'll keep it going and hope to see everybody at Jazz Fest.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, it's Thomas Mulready from CoolCleveland.com. Have a great week in Cool Cleveland.